Hello, here I am again in the name of the sovereign creator of heaven and earth, the Lord Jesus Christ. We're continuing my exposition of my translation of Genesis. And with this video, we're going to finish that translation. I'm back in chapter 49. Last video, we took the first half of Jacob blessing his sons. Now we'll finish that. First, I'll read verses 13 through 15. Zebulun will dwell on the seashore and will be a haven for ships, and his border will adjoin Sidon. Issachar is a strong-boned donkey crouched between two saddlebags. When he saw a good resting place and that the land was pleasant, he bowed his shoulder to carry and submitted to forced labor. There's two things here. As far as we know, the area that fell to Zebulun had no shore on any sea and was far from Sidon. So that word from Jacob was certainly not prophetic. He missed his shot, so to say. Now, about Issachar. The description is of a submissive but a hard-working sort of person. That's what apparently he was. Now we go to 16 through 21. Dan will judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a serpent by the way, a viper by the path that bites the horse's heel so that its rider falls backward. O Jehovah, I wait for your salvation. Gad will be attacked by a band of raiders, but he will attack them back. Asher will have plenty of bread, and he will give royal dainties. Naphtali is a gazelle let loose. He proffers beautiful sayings. About Dan. By the way, verse 18, we have a short prayer where Jacob addresses Jehovah. He appears to be asking God to deliver him from Dan. In Revelation chapter 7, verses 5 through 8, Dan is omitted from the list of the 12 tribes because Levi is included. Well, anyone who acts like this viper is really perverse. We don't want that. No. A gazelle. Well, it's nice to look at a loose gazelle. It's also nice to hear beautiful sayings. Yeah, why not? Let's go on now to verses 22 through 27. Joseph is a fruitful vine by a spring whose branches run over the wall. The archers harass him, shoot at him, and hate him. But his bow remains strong, and the arms of his hands are made agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob, by the shepherd, the rock of Israel. By the God of your father. May he help you, and may the Almighty bless you with blessings from heaven above, with blessings from the deep below, with blessings of the breasts and of the womb. The blessings of your father exceeded the blessings of my ancestors to the limit of the everlasting hills. Let them rest on the head of Joseph and on the crown of the head of him who was separated from his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he will devour the prey, and in the evening he will divide the spoil. No, Joseph and Judah were the two that got more attention. Notice that in verse 24, Jacob gives three different titles to Jehovah. I suppose he was emphasizing God's role in protecting Joseph, because if you think about all that happened to Joseph, obviously God protected him. No, I have trouble with this bit here in verse 25 about blessings from the deep below. We're used to thinking of blessings that come from above, not from the abyss. No, I have to confess, I really don't understand that reference. I don't know. I am not sure I want any blessings from below. When he talks about blessings of the breast and the womb, Jacob is asking that Joseph be given many descendants, a large posterity. Now, he says here, Jacob says that his blessings exceeded those of his ancestors. Okay, but to the limit of the everlasting hills. Well, in terms of children, Jacob certainly surpassed Isaac and Abraham, but to the limit of the everlasting hills, I take it's a bit of hyperbole. That's a nice way of saying exaggeration. And then he says, let them rest. That, of course, is the blessings. He wants the blessings to rest on the head of Joseph. Verses 28 now through 33, we'll finish that chapter. Those were the 12 tribes of Israel, each one, and that is what their father said to them when he blessed them. He blessed each of them according to his blessing. Then he commanded them and said to them, I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite as a possession for a burial place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife. There I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it were purchased from the sons of Heth. When Jacob had finished commanding his sons, he drew his feet up into the bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people. Two things here. It's very curious the way he just goes on and on about the fact that Abraham bought that cave. Again, he was just emphasizing that the cave was duly purchased. I don't see what else to make of it. Now, this bit about being gathered to his people, that's an interesting expression, repeated many times in the Old Testament, in the historical books. It cannot refer to the physical body. Okay, just think about it. It can't refer to the physical body, which would not be the case. People died in different places. But to the spirit. We have biblical teaching that the human spirit does not die. Now let's go on to chapter 50. We come to Jacob being buried. We'll read first verses 1 through 9. Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. Then Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. It took 40 days. For that is how long it takes for those who are embalmed. And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. After the days of mourning for him were over, Joseph spoke to Pharaoh's household, saying, if I have now found favor in your eyes, please speak in Pharaoh's ears, saying, my father made me swear, saying, behold, I am about to die. In my grave, which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan, there you shall bury me. Now therefore, please let me go up and bury my father. Then I will return. And Pharaoh said, go up and bury your father, as he made you swear. So Joseph went up to bury his father. All Pharaoh's servants, the elders of his house, and all elders of the land of Egypt went up with him. along with all Joseph's house, his brothers and his father's house. Only their little ones, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. Chariots and horsemen also went up with him, a very great company. Several things here. The Egyptians mourned him 70 days. Like, wow, that was a long time. And it was the Egyptians, not his family. Evidently, Jacob had earned their respect and affection, I would say, to an unusual extent. Now, notice that Joseph did not say this directly to Pharaoh. He asked his people to pass that on indirectly. But he says that he claims that his father had said that in my grave, which I dug for myself. Well, we have no record of that. But it might be, it could be, of course, that Jacob commanded someone to carve his hole there in the cave. Could have had, just get my hole, get my cave ready for me, or my hole ready for me, a grave. Could have, we don't know, no record, it could have been. Now, notice, then I will return. Joseph always respected Pharaoh's authority and evidently was never considered to be a threat to that authority, which is a good thing, a wise way for him to operate. Now, I find it curious here at the end of verse 7, the elders of the land of Egypt, the whole kit and caboodle went up with him. Wow. Evidently, that during the 17 years that Jacob lived in Egypt, maybe he became a role model or something for the other elders. We don't know. Well, anyway, they went up. I'll now read verses 10 through 14. When they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they mourned there with a great and intense lamentation. He mourned for his father for 7 days. The Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, observed the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad and said, "This is a grievous mourning for the Egyptians." Therefore, its name was called Abel Mitzrayim, which is beyond the Jordan. So his sons did to him as he had commanded them, for his sons carried him into the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre, which Abraham had bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite as a burying place. After he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers and all who went up with him to bury his father. Now, the location of this threshing floor is a problem. The text says beyond the Jordan. But of course, the interpretation of beyond depends, or on the other side, depends on the perspective. For those on the east side of the Jordan, the other side of it would be the west side and vice versa. But since the procession departed from Egypt, the perspective would be from there, and the threshing floor was on the east side of the Jordan. But the Jordan ends at the Dead Sea, and Machpelah is on the west side of the Dead Sea, about halfway up. And therefore, it's lower than the Jordan as well, below the Jordan, where it enters the Dead Sea. So the procession took a very large detour, going up the east side of the sea until it reached the Jordan. Very curious proceeding. The reason for the detour is not explained. Now, just by the way, even if the threshing floor in question were on the west side of the Jordan, just for the sake of the argument, to reach the river's end point, the procession would have had to pass through Machpelah, walking at least another unnecessary 40 kilometers, only to walk back those 40 kilometers. I think we can agree that no one would do such a thing. It's a stupid thing to do. No. So I conclude that the threshing floor was indeed on the east side of the Jordan, and the reason for that detour remains unexplained. We don't have to know. It happened. Okay. The name that the Canaanites gave to Abel Mitzrayim, that of course is descriptive. It means lamentation of the Egyptians. Okay, that's the way the names were often enough that time. Now Jacob has been buried. We come now to the brothers. They are afraid, verses 15 through 21. Now Joseph's brothers, realizing that their father was dead, said, "What if Joseph harbors a grudge against us and actually repays us for all the evil that we did to him?" So they sent a message to Joseph saying, "Before your father died, he commanded, saying, 'Thus you shall say to Joseph, I ask you now, please forgive the trespass of your fathers and their sin, for they wronged you. So then, please forgive the trespass of the servants of your father's God.'" And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Afterward, his brothers also came and fell down before him and said, "We are your slaves." But Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid. Am I in God's place? You really meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring about this present situation to save many people alive. So now, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." So he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Now then, a couple things here. The brothers invented a lie that they said that their father had said that. He didn't say that. That was a lie, but they were really afraid. They were really afraid. That was what they did. Then they claimed to be servants of your father's God, there in verse 17. Really now, when had they started acting like servants of Jehovah? Come on. Now we come to something really important. Verse 20. You meant it evil, but God meant it for good. I've seen this repeatedly in my own life. People really intend to harm you, but God uses it for good. Like he says, all things work together for those who love God. That is to say, God does use other people's evil intentions to get you where he wants you. That happens. All of that within the plan that God has for your life and for my life. They mean it for evil, but God means it for good. Now we come to the death of Joseph, and that will also close the book of Genesis. I'll read verses 22 through 26. So Joseph lived on in Egypt, he and his father's household. Joseph lived 110 years, and he saw the children of Ephraim to the third generation, as well as the children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, whom he took on his knees. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am about to die, but God will surely visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land of which he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob." And Joseph took an oath from the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. And Joseph died at the age of 110, and they embalmed him and placed him in a coffin in Egypt. Joseph insisted that they take his bones up when they left, and in fact they did. In Joshua chapter 24 and verse 32, we have a record that Joseph's bones were in fact buried in Shechem, which, by the way, was within the area occupied by Joseph's son Manasseh, just by the way. Now, curiously, this book of Genesis began with creation, but ends with a coffin. Which, by the way, is the story of our own earthly life, okay? It begins with creation and ends with a coffin. But if you belong to Jesus, there's more to the story. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and God bless.